Talk Radio Newsroom and powered by DemeraraWaves.com.
With the news at this time, I am Tiana Jordan. A very good morning to you. The news comes to you with the compliments of Eureka Medical Laboratories. To begin the news, here's a look at the lead stories. ExxonMobil says it has sufficient assets locally to finance an oil spill in Guyana. The Health Ministry is preparing to tackle reasons why thousands of persons do not want to be vaccinated against the coronavirus. A policeman is to be charged with causing the death of a couple by dangerous driving on the Mahika Bridge in early February. Regionally, 3 of the 4 bodies of the men who were sucked into a huge undersea pipeline in Trinidad have been recovered. And internationally, Ukraine has accused Russia of committing war crimes by pounding a civilian area and killing several persons. The details of these and other stories will be coming up right here in just a moment.
A COVID-19 PCR test is now mandatory for many routine activities, including travel and return-to-work purposes. At Eureka, our trained and experienced staff will ensure confidentiality while your test is conducted in a professional and timely manner with results in just 48 hours. So the next time you require an efficient and hassle-free PCR COVID-19 test, call 624-8378, 608-8378, or 623-7233 to schedule your appointment. You can also ask about our house call testing service.
And now the news in detail. ExxonMobil is assuring Guyanese that it has sufficient insurance and assets should there be an oil spill. The company is also denying claims that it had ever agreed to insurance at a value of $2.5 billion with the previous administration of the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA. The company says it is working with the EPA and co-ventures Hess and CNOOC to put in place a combined $2 billion of affiliate company guarantees. ExxonMobil Guyana says this will exceed equivalent guarantees required by regulators in Canada, the United States, and United Kingdom. ExxonMobil Guyana says it has insurance coverage that meets international industry standards for all of its petroleum activities in Guyana. Esso Exploration and Production Guyana Limited, the operator of the Stabroek Block, was established in 1998, says up to the end of 2020, it has almost $5 billion in assets. The company says this is a primary form of financial assurance. ExxonMobil says this is separate from the assets of the other Stabroek Block co-ventures who also have substantial assets and share any liability for response activities. Guyana, with international assistance, on Monday launched a campaign to counter pockets of hesitancy in taking COVID-19 vaccines because the fight against the potentially deadly virus is not over. Health workers are being trained by providing information and knowledge about the vaccines so that they can return to communities and tackle vaccine misinformation among those who are reluctant to take a jab. Health Minister Dr. Frank Anthony says local research on vaccine hesitancy shows that many persons were taking medical advice from Facebook and other social media platforms. He also says that even vaccinated parents are not encouraging their children to take the jab.
A very interesting thing is happening because in Guyana we are accustomed through our vaccination programs. With children, we normally get coverage of 98% for most of our vaccines. In some cases, we go as high as 100%. And now we want to do vaccination to help the 12 to 17, for example, to make sure that they're protected, to get them back safely to school. We have hesitancy, not just among the children, but the parents are hesitant. And some of these parents, they themselves might have taken the vaccine. They themselves might have taken the vaccine. So if you've taken the vaccine and you know that anything did not happen to you, but it protected you, why is it now that you're hesitating to make sure that your child received this vaccine?
Dr. Anthony also says that some community leaders are not encouraging others to take the jab.
We have spent millions of dollars getting into some of these communities because they're very remote. And when we got there, and we talked to the community and the community leaders, they come out, they listen to us, they're very polite, they listen to us, they ask questions. Sometimes we spend 2-3 hours engaging them, giving them all the rationale why this is so. And at the end of that engagement, we're told that we don't think we need to get vaccinated. Or maybe sometimes 2 or 3 persons from a community of 300 might take the vaccine. And that's not good enough because, again, they'll remain exposed in many ways to getting sick.
The health minister said that 80,959 persons who must get a first dose, and there are 185,208 persons who are yet to take a second dose. The Guyana representative of the United Nations Children's Fund, Nicholas Prawn, says that the workshop, which was launched on Monday, will see healthcare workers being trained to counter vaccine hesitancy.
We must strengthen our efforts to connect with those who have questions, provide answers to their questions. And we must turn vaccines into vaccinations. To do so more effectively, we must improve our healthcare workers' knowledge and confidence in communicating about the COVID-19 vaccines. And this is precisely what this workshop today is all about, so that you return to your communities in a strengthened position to tackle vaccine misinformation with enhanced skills to continue your engagements. This engagement at the community level is critical to reaching individuals who may need just a little more information and reassurance before they take the important step to get vaccinated and protect themselves, their families, and their communities.
UNICEF representative in Guyana, Nicholas Prawn. Guyana's President Irfan Ali is expected to update other Caribbean community CARICOM leaders about progress being made to increase regional food production. For several decades, CARICOM has been grappling with ways of reducing its now more than $4 billion annual food import bill. CARICOM Secretary General Carla Barnett told a news conference on Monday that President Ali will be updating the midterm summit of regional leaders, which begins on Tuesday in Belize.
We're talking about planting more in food in environmentally sustainable ways. The government of Guyana, in particular, His Excellency President Ali, is leading the charge there. There's some interesting and important undertakings that he has made in terms of investing in things like protected agriculture, targeting the particular food items that we import on a regular basis, and making investments in producing those. So those are the things that we're going to be expecting him to be reporting on.
The Guyana government and the local private sector have teamed up to produce corn and soya in an effort to reduce foreign exchange and satisfy local demand. A civilian is alleging that he has been beaten and threatened by police during a traffic stop. The man, named Christopher Creighton of Partica, has released a video on Facebook showing what appears to be part of an account of what transpired. In the video, a man is heard threatening to murder someone.
No, what you can't want to do me, though? No. Listen to me. Hey, humble, I could apply you, buddy, but you can't want to knock me.
Listen to me.
Hey, I say, hey, what you telling me, boy? No, Sergeant, no.
I will just chip in the
Lose me now, buddy. Hey, lose me. No, you can't. Listen to me, Sergeant. You got a problem. You got a problem thinking with the police?
The Guyana Police Force says its Office of Professional Responsibility is investigating the allegations posted on social media against police station at Bartica. Mr. Creighton alleges that the traffic police assaulted and used threatening language towards him during a traffic stop. Police say that he was stopped on February 26th on 3rd Avenue, Bartica, and requested to produce his driver's license and documents for the motorcycle that he was driving. According to police, Mr. Creighton had none of the documents requested by the police in his possession at the time and also refused to take a breathalyzer test. As a result, Christopher Creighton was arrested and taken to the Bartica police station. Police say he was subsequently released and placed on self-bail, and his motorcycle returned to him the very day. The documents requested had been brought to the station while he was in custody. Creighton returned to the Bartica police station on Monday morning and reported that he had been assaulted and verbally threatened by the police during the incident. He was escorted to the Bartica hospital to be medically examined, and a statement was taken from him. The Director of Public Prosecutions, DPP, has recommended that a policeman be charged with causing the death of a man and his girlfriend by dangerous driving. The horrific accident occurred during a high-speed chase that ended on the Mahaika Bridge when the police pickup slammed into a car and rammed it into a truck that was behind. Those who perished were Christopher Bagwandat and Sharida Passad. The DPP has ordered that Constable Lawrence Carmichael be charged indictably, which means that a magistrate will conduct a preliminary inquiry to determine if there is sufficient evidence for him to face trial by a High Court judge and jury. The decision to institute the charge against Constable Carmichael, according to the DPP chambers, was based on statements contained in the police file. The DPP has also recommended that further investigations be conducted before the charge is instituted. A technician has been electrocuted while conducting maintenance works in Amelius Ward, Linden. Dead is 19-year-old Anthony Monroe, an internet technician who was employed by Relink Wireless Internet Service. Police say that he was tasked with the maintenance of internet service, and he and a colleague were erecting an almost 40-foot tall metal pole. However, the pole accidentally touched nearby electrical wires, causing both of them to be shocked. Monroe was immediately picked up by his colleague, Mr. Ryland Sandy, and rushed to the Linden Hospital complex, where Monroe was pronounced dead on arrival by Dr. Dadson. The body was examined and no marks of violence were seen. And now in regional news, the 24 Jamaican students who on Sunday journeyed to a border crossing in Ukraine to get to Poland are now on the other side. Jamaica's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Kamina Johnson-Smith, provided an update via social media platform Twitter just before midnight on Sunday. The minister says the students have finally crossed into Poland and are now comfortably on their way to Krakow. The official says they were met by friends of Jamaica and their immediate needs addressed. The students had arrived at the designated border checkpoint a few hours earlier after having to proceed by foot when the bus on which they journeyed from Lviv in Ukraine, which is relatively near to the border, came upon roadblocks. The minister, in her post to social media platform Twitter, thanked everyone for their prayers. The bodies of 3 of the 4 divers who were sucked into a 36-inch underwater crude oil pipeline of Pointe-à-Pierre Trinidad last Friday have been recovered. This was announced by Paria Fuel Trading Company in a statement around 7 p.m. on Monday. The news came just hours after relatives of the missing men appealed to the company to give them closure by bringing the missing men back to them as humanely and quickly as possible. Christopher Budram, Faisal Kurban, Rishi Nagasar, and Kazim Ali Jr. and Yusuf Henry were doing maintenance work on a pipeline when the tragedy occurred. Budram was rescued that same day by diver Ronald Ramatar, a relative of Kurban. He is in stable condition at the San Fernando General Hospital. Energy Minister Stuart Young appealed to the public not to speculate and so risk adding to the burden on families. Instead, he says, the investigation should be allowed to proceed.
This investigation will be charged with the responsibility of going in, analyzing what plans were put in place before the job started, what was taking place during this unfortunate and tragic accident, what took place thereafter, an assessment, an analysis, a critique of what took place at all levels. Importantly, recommendations, identifications of any gaps that may have existed along the way. Fellow citizens, at this stage, respectfully, it is not for any of us to be playing judge and jury on anyone.
The Trinidad and Tobago Energy Minister says he has asked BP, TNT, and Shell for personnel to be on the investigating committee, which will most likely be chaired by one of his ministry's permanent secretaries. Young displayed a diagram to show how the missing men had been working at sea surface level inside an air-filled chamber when something unknown happened to cause them to be sucked down into a U-shaped pipeline with a 55-foot vertical drop on the sea. He scotched a rumor that the pipeline had been capped while the men were missing, explaining that to do so would have required other divers to go on the sea, and that had not happened. As discussions over what a possible minimum wage increase in Antigua and Barbuda could be set at, a trade unionist is supporting calls for multiple rates to be explored. President of the Antigua and Barbuda Free Trade Union, Samuel James, says there were initially multiple categories and different rates applied to each industry when living wages were first introduced to the country. Antigua Observer reports that the labor code does not make provision for the establishment of a single minimum rate. He says a standard rate across the board could ultimately be to the detriment of employees. James believes that the general practice of society dictates that the minimum rate an employee is paid should differ based on the industry in which they are employed. He suggested that recently reconstituted Minimum Wage Advisory Committee should look at each industry and conduct full investigations looking at the extent and nature of the job and the business, as well as the income earning position of the business in question. The union president said while having one rate across the board may be easier, failing to consider the nuances in different industries may ultimately be unjust to employees. And now for the international news, here's the latest bulletin coming from the BBC World Service.
BBC News. Hello, this is Jerry Smith. Officials in Ukraine's second city, Kharkiv, say the Russian military has attacked the city centre with rockets and cruise missiles. The head of Kharkiv's regional administration said residential areas have been hit, as well as the square in front of government offices. Officials believe there have been civilian casualties. James Waterhouse is in Kyiv.
What we are seeing and hearing in Kharkiv, a few hundred miles away to the northeast of Ukraine, that is causing concerns here. More indiscriminate shelling on residential areas. We've seen a missile strike on a government building in the centre of Kharkiv on a busy street corner. And the worry is, despite it being quiet now, we have had another louder night of explosions, it's fair to say. We had one very close by that we could actually see. It lit up the night sky. The worry is that tide of Russian advance and all the fighting that goes with it could well end up here in the centre of the capital, Kyiv.
In Washington, the Ukrainian ambassador to the United States accused Russian forces of using a devastating weapon known as a vacuum bomb. She did not say where it was used, and there's been no independent verification. New satellite pictures released by an American technology firm show that a vast Russian military convoy heading towards the Ukrainian capital Kyiv now stretches for more than 60 kilometres. The company, Maxar Technologies, says the convoy includes armoured vehicles, tanks and artillery. Correspondents in Kyiv says the slow progress of the huge convoy towards the capital is creating fear, while reports from elsewhere in Ukraine say that Russia is surrounding population areas and denying them food and essential supplies. Poland says a record number of people, 100,000, entered the country from Ukraine on Monday. Polish border guards say 24,000 have crossed the border already today. On Monday, the United Nations said more than 500,000 have fled Ukraine to neighbouring countries. Kasia Madeira is in Poland near the Ukrainian border where refugees are arriving.
Behind me, buses coming in all the time to bring people who have just crossed over the border. They're then brought into what is, I can only describe as just a huge warehouse stroke shopping mall where inside row upon row upon row of camp beds have been put out so people can get just a little bit of sleep, of respite, because they have been travelling for some of them for days. We've heard from people who have been travelling from as far away as Odessa, lots and lots of different people coming in.
YouTube says it's blocking all channels connected to the Russian state media outlets RT and Sputnik. YouTube said the immediate Europe-wide ban was imposed because of the situation in Ukraine. World News from the BBC. China has begun evacuating its citizens from Ukraine. Hundreds of students have been bused from Kyiv and Odessa to Moldova. It's believed there are more than 6,000 Chinese in Ukraine. Beijing has been on friendly terms with Russia, refusing to condemn its invasion. A cyber attack at a supplier for Toyota has led to a shutdown of the car maker's Japanese factories. Toyota said operations should be back to normal by Wednesday, but the production of almost 13,000 cars would be affected. The Prime Minister, Fumio Kishida, has joined Western sanctions against Moscow and announced $100 million of aid for Kyiv. Mariko Oi reports.
No information was immediately available about who was behind the possible attack or their motive, but a suspected cyber attack on one of Toyota's major suppliers, Kojima Industries, came just after Japan joined Western allies in clamping down on Russia after it invaded Ukraine. While it's not clear if the attack was at all related, Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has said that the government was investigating. Japanese factories account for about a third of Toyota's production, and it's unclear if they can resume operations on Wednesday.
A delegation of former senior U.S. officials sent by President Biden has arrived in Taiwan, signalling America's continuing commitment to the island. The timing of the visit, just days after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, is significant. There's been speculation that China, which believes Taiwan is its own territory, might use Russia's military action to push its own claims over the island. Military helicopters in Australia have carried out dramatic rescues of people stranded on rooftops as heavy rain and flooding continues along the east coast. An elderly woman has been found dead inside her flooded home. It brings to at least 9 the number of people who've died since the severe weather began. BBC News.
The news came to you with the compliments of Eureka Medical Laboratories.
Don't let the fear of contracting the coronavirus disease deter you from seeking the medical care you need. At Eureka Labs, we ensure the safety of our clients and staff with our rigid sanitization routine. This involves the use of ultraviolet lights to effectively rid the air and all surfaces of viruses and bacteria that may be present throughout the lab daily. The light works to rapidly inactivate microorganisms through a physical process that is invisible to human eye. So the next time you need a checkup, don't hesitate to give us a call on 225-7574 to schedule your appointment.
And now to end the news, here is a recap of the leads. ExxonMobil says it has sufficient assets locally to finance an oil spill in Guyana. The Health Ministry is preparing to tackle reasons why thousands of persons do not want to be vaccinated against the coronavirus. A policeman is to be charged with causing the death of a couple by dangerous driving on the Mahaika Bridge in early February. Regionally, 3 of the 4 bodies of the men who were sucked into a huge undersea pipeline in Trinidad have been recovered. And internationally, Ukraine has accused Russia of committing war crimes by pounding a civilian area and killing several persons. And that's the end of the news.
This has been the news, compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom. For ongoing updates, visit demerarawaves.com, and you can check facebook.com/demwaves and twitter.com/demwaves.